Looking at the dark triad, the so-called counterproductive behavioral tendencies in Zortify is maybe one thing of the most fascinating psychological things that we can do. So we strongly recommend to have a look at these tendencies. Every one of us has some extent of it in themselves, but in certain extreme areas, and if there is even more than one score that scores super high, it might give us an idea of a potential risk. The risk is that people who are scoring extremely high on these dimensions, they might have a personality tendency that can result in counterproductive effects. For example, they are a little bit too impulsive, or people don't trust them anymore because they are pursuing their own agendas, but it's a hidden agenda. They are not open, and then trust goes down. Or they are a little bit too self-centered in the sense, okay, they only want to shine, they only want to have people giving applause, but at the end they don't want to, they are not open for critics, or they don't want to hear any other opinion. So these tendencies can cause conflicts and really counterproductive effects that we don't want to see in our teams. So looking at these counterproductive tendencies is a worthwhile endeavor. Let's start with the self-centeredness. The self-centeredness is also known as a narcissistic tendency. It's not a clinical diagnostics, that's important. So even if people score super high, we would never ever say this is a narcissistic personality. This is something that clinical psychologists do. We look into the organizational elements of it, and here a certain narcissistic tendency is very often to be observed, particularly in leadership positions. We expect from our data that every fourth person in the top executive levels, say board, C-level, or managing director positions, that every fourth person in these positions show extremely high scores on the self-centeredness score of dimension of Zortify. So is this now a good leader or not? We can be sure that at a certain point, maybe starting at percentile rank of 80, 85, that these scores are always already showing a strong tendency towards a narcissistic tendency. However, in a middle area between 50 to 80, it's quite normal, according to our data, to score in this area. And we can expect, according to meta-analysis studies that we know, that there is also a certain kind of positive impact on teams. So here we see in a middle range of 50 to 80 on our scale that a certain narcissistic tendency that we call self-centeredness might be even positively correlated to team success. The second dimension of the so-called dark triad, according to the author, his name is, by the way, Dilroy Paulus, a wonderful Canadian personality psychologist who described this in his work. And Zortify is an adaptation of his theoretical work for the organizational workplace. And people who are scoring high on this strategic manipulation dimension, they typically pursue their own agenda. But this agenda, they are not open about it. So they are not sharing it with others, but they are behaving like this so that they also always can benefit and have personal advantages. But it's not going for the sake of the company or the organization or the team, but it's for their own sake. And they believe that they have all the rights to get what they deserve, and for this all means is allowed. Includes also potentially not open behavior, tactical behavior, dealing with information, up to being non-integer and also maybe non-ethical in everything that we do. And so scoring super high on this dimension might be a risk factor in recruitment, because we might expect persons that are a little bit working according to only their own agenda without being open. And finally, we have a third dimension, which is this impulsive excitement seeking. Sometimes we also call it blood pressure candidates. They are always, in every area of their lives, they are putting themselves out of the average. They want to be extraordinary, super in everything. And of course, when I go with these expectations through my life, I will experience a lot of frustrations. But when I'm then a little bit emotional and not under enough control, it's going to be hard for me to deal with these frustrations. And then things can happen that are a little bit irrational. People can become aggressive in their words, in their wording, or even physically. Or they try to to push others against it. They are irrational in their decision making, and altogether this can be a little bit. They become upset easily and do things that, in the long run, with a clear mind, they would never ever do. And these very impulsive people, always seeking for the next excitement, they can be also very dangerous if you want to run a steady and smooth business. So in total, we see the self-centeredness. Here again, keep in mind that for some average amount of scores, we still expect positive leadership behavior. It does not necessarily be counterproductive, but in the extremes it can turn in the negative effects. And then we have the strategic manipulative characters, fairly hard to identify, typically very diplomatic on the front side, but they are dealing behind your back. And then you have these impulsive people. Sometimes the combination of 2 or even 3 dimensions is possible, and then we see high scores in all of these dimensions. And this is a risk analysis that we recommend to do both when you promote people internally, as well as, of course, you recruit people newly for your team or organization.